I'm a horseman, means I raise horses. Always have been, always will be. My granddaddy, he was a horseman too, as well as my father. My son Jeb, he's 6 years old. Once he's all grown up, he's gonna be a horseman. Don't know if I'm gonna live that long, but if Jeb has any sons, I'm gonna make damn sure they're horsemen too. Hell, if he has any daughters, I'll make them into horsewomen. Don't want no one thinking I got a problem with women. Nah, truth is I love them, even got married to one. Her name's Ingeborg, one of them Scandinavian names. Met her while I was over in Norway on business. See, I'm a stud milker, and a damn good one at that. Out of fine breeding stock of stallions back at the ranch. Maybe most of y'all ain't familiar with horses, but there are folks out there who care a whole lot about them. I like him for the beauty, the majesty, but for a lot of folk it's about the sport. They need a horse that can run quick, turn on a dime, and jump real high. If someone's trying to create the perfect running horse, they sure as hell ain't gonna pick the mommy and daddy all willy-nilly. No sorry, they're gonna be looking for a mommy and a daddy that meet their needs. Problem is, let's say you got the perfect mommy and daddy. Horse breeding, it's a real violent act. Maybe y'all know about that Mr. Hans feller. Real shame what happened to him. But that's the kind of reality you gotta deal with when you're trying to breed a horse. A mare, her hole ain't much larger than an adult man's. I'm not trying to get too explicit here, just wanna make it clear that you got a high risk of damage in the mare when you let a stallion run wild on the poor thing. So that's where I come in. I got a real gentle touch, been doing this stuff for decades. I get a call from some feller who wants to breed himself a good running horse, says he's got the mare right with him, and all he needs is a particular one of the stallions I keep on the ranch. Well, what I'll do is milk that stallion real good and then hand deliver the stuff I get to the client in question. Most people, they probably can't keep that stuff fresh for more than an hour or two. Thing is, my wife's real smart when it comes to freezing stuff. Cryogenics is what it's called. She's got all sorts of capsules and containers that she's made that'll keep the stuff good for, hell, weeks. Never taken me that long to reach the client, but if humans ever start living on the moon, and I've gotta make deliveries up there, well, that's already settled. Now, once I reach the client, it's up to them to administer the stuff to the mare. Ain't my business, you know. I handle everything on the stallion side of things, and the rest is up to them. That's the way my life's been for a real long time. Would have been perfectly fine with milking studs till the day I die. Sometimes, though, that just ain't the way things go. I guess it was around half a year ago that I noticed one of my stallions, Embrigo, was missing. Embrigo's a jumping horse, had a long and successful career in the jumping circuits. Hell, I've never seen a horse that can jump half as high as that stallion can. Sorry, I ought to use past tense when I talk about Embrigo. I didn't do too well in English class on account of my fascination with horses. I was just a lad. Guess in my head I figured if a horse don't need English, I don't neither. I was totally nonverbal till the age of 10. Anyway, so I go into Embrigo's stable to give him his morning feed, and I see that the damn horse ain't there. Well, I've had horses run on me plenty of times. Hell, sometimes I'll find him a mile away, walking around some feller's cornfield like that's right where they're meant to be. Usually when that happens, though, I can track him, you know, following the hoof prints and all that stuff. In this case, though, there just weren't anything to go off. Like Embrigo just disappeared into thin air. Spent the whole day looking around for that horse, most of the next day too, but I couldn't find anything. Problem is, stallion like that's worth more than most fellers' houses. If the horse hadn't run off, must have been horse-napped, way I figured. So, I got the police involved. They couldn't turn up anything. Eventually, I just had to give up. Damn shame, it was. Don't think the world'll ever see another jumping horse like Embrigo. A bit later I got an order from a client, had a strong prancing mare, and wanted to try and pop out some prize winning show horses. A good show horse needs to be real smart. It's a whole different type of competition compared to the running and the jumping that most folk are familiar with. Well, I had the perfect stallion to go with that mare, a real horse genius named Svengali. Picked him up a few years back, was honestly blown away by how smart the thing was. I guess you could tell it from the way he walked. Weren't nothing like the other horses, more like a horse that had reached one of them states of nirvana the fellers in Asia talk about. Sometimes I'd see him prancing round his pasture, doing the kinds of routines he'd done as a show horse, like he was practicing them, or some stuff. Couldn't believe my goddamn eyes. Well, I gave Svengali a good milking, and hopped on a plane to Canada to go meet the client. Been to Canada a few times. Before that, never been impressed. Too many trees for a horseman like me. Well, I drop off the stuff and mosey my way back home. Figure that's that. Problem is, I get another call from the feller a few days later. Tells me his mare just up and died. Damn shame is what I said, but there ain't too much I can do. Feller starts begging me, says he's got another prancing mare that ain't as good as the last one, but still pretty good. Truth be told, I felt a little bad for the guy, so I decided to give him a discount. 5% seemed reasonable to me, but my wife managed to talk me up to 10%. Said the feller must have been in a real grieving state of mind, and the least I could do is give him a 2-digit discount. Well, my wife's a lot more sensible than me when it comes to most things that ain't related to horses, so I decided to go with whatever she thought was best. So I gave Svengali another milking, and went up to Canada again. Milking a stallion twice in such a short span of time usually ain't good for the horse, but I knew Svengali could take it. If he weren't up to it, he would have refused to be milked. That's the kind of horse he is. Anyway, I go back to the ranch, and a few days later I get yet another call from the client. Seems this mare died too. This time he sounds a little riled up, though, at least as riled up as a Canadian feller can get. He says the stuff I gave him was poison. I say that's ridiculous. I got it right from the source. How dare a Canadian feller like you accuse me of killing your horse? Then he tells me he saved a little bit of the stuff I gave him. Send it in for testing. Results came out all screwed up. I say how so? He says the DNA don't match up, like the little squiggly things, and it don't all come from the same horse. I assure him that I ain't diluting the stuff in any manner, but I don't quite think the feller believes me. It ain't exactly a rare practice in my particular field, hate to admit, but it can kill a mare, and that just don't sit right with me. Can't say I really understand how it works, but maybe that's for the better. Horseman's gotta keep things simple if he don't wanna end up losing his mind in this screwed up world we live in. Well, had to retire Svengali after that. If he was squirting out pure poison, not much I could really do to resolve the situation. And when I say retire, I don't mean I shot the poor bastard, just wasn't milking him no more. Only put down one horse in my whole life, never had the heart to do it again. Anyway, things quieted down the next month or two, then I started having more problems. Studs started disappearing again. First it was a pullin' horse named Balder, then it was a running horse named Late for breakfast. Few days later it was another pullin' horse, Frito. By that point I had too many missing horse cases, and not enough time in the day to figure out what in the hell was going on. Then, one day when I went out to feed him, I noticed something strange with Svengali. My eyesight ain't what it used to be. Must have been why I didn't notice it sooner, but that old stud weren't looking quite like he used to no more. Hell, he weren't looking like no horse I'd ever seen before. Had a few extra eyes just popping out all willy-nilly round his head, and when he opened his mouth there were so many teeth in there that they looked to be trying to push each other out. His color weren't quite right either. Before he'd been tan all over, but now there was browns and blacks and grays mixed in everywhere. He looked to have put on some weight too, had what you'd probably describe as a beer gut, just on a horse. Thought to myself maybe the bastard found his way into the shed where I keep the horse food, but that sure as hell didn't explain the eyes or the teeth or any of the other stuff. I tried checking his vitals to make sure everything was working alright, but when I touched his skin felt like something was pulling at my fingers, and I got spooked real good. Well, situation was real messed up with that. Had the missing horses, and now I wasn't real sure what to do about Svengali. I guess most horsemen would have just put him down after seeing some stuff like that, but I ain't most horsemen. Don't mean that in a good way. Guess I already explained my whole thing with putting a horse down. Ended up flipping a coin on it. Heads, I let him live in peace. Tails, I put him out of his misery. Well, got tails. Figured I'd have Jeb do it. Have him build himself some character. Set things up in the stable all nice and funeral-like. Figure if I show some respect for Svengali, maybe God'll forgive me for killing one of his most beautiful creatures. So what I do is I hand Jeb the shotgun and tell him to aim it right between Svengali's eyes, the two that are meant to be there, at least. And then he pulls the trigger, and Svengali's head explodes into a mess of brains. and blood and all that other stuff. One of the teeth hits me square in the jaw, swore it knocked a couple of my own loose. But who knows? Jeb just drops the shotgun and starts crying his eyes out, the tears carving out a path in his face that's all covered in horse blood. I give him a pat on the head and tell him he did a damn good job and I'm proud of him, but I notice something ain't quite right. The horse's body's still standing there like he didn't just get his head blown off. Then there's this weird sound like grapes getting stomped and something starts to emerge out of where Svengali's head used to be. First there's a mouth, then I see the nose holes, then there's a long snout, eyes, and finally some ears. The numbers of some of those things weren't quite what they should have been, but it was close enough to a horse's head that a fool who'd never seen a horse in person would have still recognized it as belonging to a horse. Well, Jeb up and faints when he sees that, so I gotta worry about getting him somewhere safe before I can even think about what in the hell's going on. So I take Jeb into the house and have my wife look after him, but when I go back out to the stable there's no trace of Svengali anywhere. By that point I figured, well, screw it, if that horse wants to run away I'll let him run away. I got bigger problems to contend with anyhow. Got a client living in Japan, put in multiple orders. That right there was enough to snap me out of the weird state of mind I was in. So I gots to work, did some milking, then I flew on over there. Was my first time in Japan. Terrain ain't too good for horses, but some folk try to make do. Guess they mostly use the horses for eating over there. I'm sure it ain't half bad, but considering my deep emotional connection with the horses, I just can't do it. Feels like I'm spitting in the face of God. Well, client weren't like that, was more interested in the running type of horse than the eat. Maybe if you weren't Japanese we could have been good buddies. Did learn a couple of words of Japanese, though, real interest in language. Got a good laugh out of every feller when I greeted them with konnichiwa, dude. When I got back to the States, wife had some real bad news for me. Rest of the horses gone missing the night before, just like that. Felt like I was about to soil myself right then and there, but I held it in. Gotta maintain some semblance of dignity when you're the man of the house. Felt like a real fool. Only way something like that happens is horse napping. Shoulda installed cameras or some stuff all over the place. Guess it just sorta slipped my mind. Well, I'd never had problems with anything of the sort till Umbrigo went missing, so I hope you can forgive me for not handling security properly. Folks round these parts are real kind, ain't the types to kidnap a feller's horses. Well, I spent the next week thinking about killing myself. Sure, the studs I'd lost were worth a whole lot of money, but more than that I felt like I'd lost my kid. Not Jeb, but a different kid, a horse kid. Guess that's the way most folk feel when something they love goes missing. Spend a lot of time just walking round the pastures, staring at the prints in the dirt where the horses been stepping before. Jeb tried cheering me up, but he's just a kid. He don't know what real suffering is. Anyhow, it was one of those days of passing round the pastures that I noticed something I hadn't noticed before, a set of hoof prints leading outside the fences. Well, more like 3 or 4 sets of hoof prints. Felt my heart jump up into a place where it ain't meant to be. Figured if I followed the trail I'd find something of some sort. So I mosey along, not trying to get my hopes up, but I'm a horseman at heart, so I can't really help but send a silent prayer up to God, begging him to put one of my studs at the end of that trail. Trail goes out through the fields, into the woods, out the woods, back into the woods, and then I find myself standing in front of something like a cave. I don't got a flashlight on me, so I head back to grab one. Take the shotgun too, just in case. Ain't too keen around caves, being the polar opposite of a pasture and all. So then I'm standing in front of the cave again, and I shine the flashlight inside. Don't see nothing, but the hoof prints clearly go into the cave, so I start stepping forward. It's dark as hell in there, but I can hear some kind of sound up ahead, some sort of heavy breathing. Sounds to me like a horse deep in slumber, something I've heard many times in my life, and I start getting all excited and whatnot. The closer I get, though, the less sure I am that I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing. Something snoring, but maybe it ain't a horse. Then I hear it again, and I think, damn, maybe it really is a horse. I just don't know, so I keep walking. Then I see it lying there not too far ahead, still sleeping, and snoring like a babe. Except it ain't a babe, and it sure as hell ain't no horse, either. I lose my grip on the shotgun, and it falls on the ground, blasting a hole in the wall of the cave. and making a real loud sound. Well, that wakes the damn thing up, and as it stands, I find it difficult to really get a good handle on what the hell I'm looking at. It's got the body parts of a horse, but none of them are arranged in the right order. One head's in the right place, but there are 3 others sticking out the back, and I swear I can see 8 or 9 legs just sticking out every which way. Except that ain't all. There are wings sticking out everywhere too. Tiny little wings like the ones you'd see on a bat or something like that. There's more too. Tails and legs and ears and eyes and mouths. And none of it makes any goddamn sense, so I don't try to think about it too much. Just pick the shotgun back up and fire it off in the thing's general direction. That don't seem to do much sides piss it off, and it starts making these horrible sounds and scrambling towards me. I ain't never soiled my pants before, but I reckon I was pretty damn close to doing it right there. I start backing up and then shoot at its legs, and that seems to knock the thing down. Thing is, I feel like a damn fool cause I know I only got 1 shot left. Didn't think I was actually gonna use the shotgun, so I didn't care to bring any spare ammunition with me. Figure I gotta make my last shot count, so I step towards the thing while it's wriggling around on the ground. Assuming it's Svengali I'm looking at, I figure trying to shoot the head off ain't gonna work, so I aim where I think the heart's gonna be. Then I pull the trigger, and there's this huge explosion of horse and blood, and after I wipe off the flashlight it looks like the thing ain't moving no more. I just stand there for a while and stare at it, but no amount of staring makes me feel no better. It's still twitching all over, all the eyes and wings and ears, but it sure as hell don't got the strength to get up and chase after me no more. Sounds strange, but I can't help but tear up a little looking at it. Might not have been a horse no more, but it used to be one. Maybe more than one. So, I decide I ought to give the thing a proper burial. So, I head back home to grab the shovel. Dug a lot of horse graves in my time. It's a personal thing. That's why I don't use no machinery for it. Man and horse have been existing together longer than any damn machine has. Guess you could call it a sign of respect. Only thing is, the body ain't there when I go back to the cave. Whole place is covered in blood and pieces of horse, but I can't find no sign of the thing I'm looking for. Don't see no sign of where it could have went, neither, but that don't stop me from searching. Well, I don't come up with anything, so eventually, I gotta call it a day. Give my wife a big kiss when I get back home, and tell her I love her. Say the same thing to Jeb. Even a horseman's gotta have room in his heart for other fellers than himself. Sorry, the whole thing in the cave happened yesterday, and after I got home I thought I'd write something up since I figured maybe someone out there might be interested in hearing about it. I don't actually talk like that in real life. I guess you could say I was playing that part up. I'm actually a 5'1" Chinese American guy, not the usual type that runs a horse ranch. I suppose some part of me thought that nobody would want to hear a story from a horse rancher who wasn't a cowboy. Well, that's beside the point. I don't feel like it's appropriate to keep up the cowboy act. I woke up this morning to get Jeb ready for school, but he wasn't in his bedroom. He wasn't anywhere in the house, as far as I could tell. I only noticed that the front door was hanging open after I'd basically turned the entire place upside down. So, I thought that maybe Jeb had wandered out onto the ranch. A little out of character, but a possibility. I called out to him a few times, but didn't get any kind of response. Then, I heard a scream off in the distance, but it wasn't just a scream. There was an undertone to it, like the whinny of a frightened horse. There were other sounds, too, shrieks and caws and howls, all rolled together into that cry. Well, I think I know what's out there waiting for me, but I don't know if I'm ready to face it. Guess that's why I'm sitting here, writing this, instead of looking for my son. I've got the shotgun with me, and I think I'm about to head out now. But I don't know if I'm going to be returning. Depends on what I find, I guess. When all's said and done, I might end up being more horse than man.